Hello and welcome to the podcast Listen the Voice of Truth. In this, I will tell you the experiences of my life with God and the things that I live by every day. Enjoy the session.
I just came back recently from a mission trip and there I met some very beautiful people. They carried a heart that was full of the beauty of God. And they taught me some real good things. Not with their words exactly, but I learned those things through their lifestyle. I just want to highlight some of the facts that I learned from their lives. We all know this one verse that is very common in every fellowship that we get. John chapter 4 verse 24. God is a spirit and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. And if I can take your focus for once to the verse prior to that, it says, "But the hour is coming and now is when the true worshippers will rise and worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father seeks such to worship him." It clearly says that it is the will of the Father that he desires those kind of people who worship him in spirit and truth. We all have learned this verse, we all have heard of this verse, we all have seen people use this verse to worship the Lord in spirit and truth, but have we actually understood what it means to worship the Lord in spirit and in truth? Well, till a couple days back, I didn't know it either. I just want to keep it before you what some simple thing that I learned. Worship the Father in spirit and in truth because that's what the Father is looking for. If someone worships the Father because he is a spirit himself, must worship the Lord in spirit and in truth. Let's focus on the spirit for one time. I used to think if I lift my hands in worship, I'm worshiping in the spirit. If I'm speaking in tongues in the time of worship, I'm worshiping in the spirit. That if I'm kneeling down or if I'm lifting up my hands or if I'm speaking in tongues or if I'm blessing the name of the Lord or ministering to him, I used to think these things are worshiping the Lord in spirit. But all this time what I was actually doing was just constraining, was just fixing the things of the spirit to some physical actions, to just some fixed forms, that if these things are seen, it is worship in the spirit. And I was completely wrong. I'm not saying those things are bad to do in worship, but those things don't prove that you are worshiping the Lord in spirit, because the spirit has no form, the spirit has no boundary, the spirit isn't fixed to one particular action or a certain type of behavior. It's much more than that. The spirit is not fixed to one place, to one form, to one word, to one action. It's limitless. It's everywhere. You don't have to have a fixed place to worship the Father in the Spirit. You don't have to have a fixed language to worship the Father in the Spirit. You don't have to have a particular action or a format that you choose to worship the Lord in the Spirit. You can worship the Lord anywhere, anyhow, anytime you want. And that's what actually means to worship the Lord in the Spirit, because the Spirit is not bound to your particular upper room. The Spirit is not bound to your music. The Spirit is not bound to your speaking in tongues. The Spirit is not bound to anything that you ever would do. But the Spirit is open and free and everywhere. Look at Paul. Paul and his mates were just worshipping the Father in spirit when they were in the cell locked up, and the Spirit moved there. The Spirit of the Lord freed them. Daniel, he was worshipping in the lion's den. God delivered him from the mouth of many lions in the den. Worship is not just limited to your room. Worship is not just limited to your closed doors. Worship is not just limited to your four walls. Worship is not limited to your church building. Worship is not just limited to your fellowship. Worship is everywhere, anywhere, anyhow, anytime. And the Lord seeks such a people who worship the Lord in the Spirit. I'm not saying lifting up of hands and speaking in tongues and ministering to the Lord is bad. When someone worships in the Spirit, all these things are just an outpour of the Spirit within. Worship is not from the outward things that you do, but the worship is internal. What comes out of your heart is what really matters to the Lord, that you worship Him in the Spirit. These things, these actions are just an outpour, but your worship comes from inside, and you can do it anywhere without a particular form, without a particular manner. You can just be open and just worship the Lord. You don't even have to speak out words. You still can worship the Lord. You don't even understand what you're saying, but you can still worship the Lord, because worship in the Spirit is just everywhere. Worship in the Spirit is timeless. It doesn't need to have a fixed time. It doesn't need to have a fixed action. It doesn't need to have a fixed language. It doesn't have to have music in it or songs, anything. But worshiping in the Spirit means to live a life of worship. To worship the Lord in the Spirit means to take the worship that you do in church, or you do in the fellowship, or you do in your secret place outside. When you stop limiting the Spirit just in particular places or actions, you start to worship the Lord in the Spirit. When it's not just limited to your rooms, when it's not just limited to your four four walls. But when you take it outside, that is you worshiping the Lord in the Spirit. Every time you are washing the dishes, you are worshiping the Lord within. You are driving your car to work, you are worshiping the Lord within. You are working on your desk job and you're worshiping the Lord within. You're talking to people, but you can still worship the Lord within. You can do your work, you can just carry on with your day and still worship the Lord within. That is you worshiping the Lord in the Spirit. And when you take this kind of worship in the Spirit, that will make you live a lifestyle of worship. And living a lifestyle of worship is actually worshiping the Lord in the Spirit. That's why the heart of the Lord is towards them who worship Him in the Spirit. Every time, constantly, without ceasing, just everywhere they go, just worship Him. Now, when we look at the truth part, it's just as simple as it's written that you worship Him just as you are. Every time I used to worship, I used to make a mental model for myself that I am holy and that's why I'm worshiping. I am holy, the Lord has made me holy, and that's why I am worshiping Him. Basically, I was just making up a mind for myself that I am not who I am. I'm not the sinner that I am. I'm not the fallen person that I am. That I'm someone better. That I'm more qualified than what I actually am. I used to think that I need to be better to worship the Lord, and that's actually most certainly not true, because the Lord wants you to worship Him just as you are. Rich, worship Him. Sad, worship Him. Poor, worship Him. Happy, just worship Him. If you're capable or not, worship Him. If you're worthy or not, worship Him. If you can sing well or not, worship Him. If you are with someone or not, just worship Him. Just worship Him, being grounded in the reality of who you are. You are a sinner, worship Him still. You are away from the Lord, worship Him still. You play good music, worship Him still. You don't know how to play any instrument, worship Him still. You don't need anyone else. You don't need nothing else. You don't have to have a $5,000 watch on your wrist to worship Him. You don't have to have an Armani suit on to worship Him. You can still worship Him with a hole on your sleeve. God isn't bothered with the hole that is in your shirt. God isn't bothered how cheap your pants are. God isn't bothered what car you drive. It could be a Lexus, it could be a Lamborghini, it could be a Maruti Suzuki. God is not even the least bothered. He just isn't bothered about what you have. But what He actually wants is for you to worship Him being grounded in the reality of your life. If you are a sinner, just worship Him as a sinner. You don't have to portray yourself to be like someone else to worship Him. You don't have to make yourself better to worship Him. You don't have to put on good clothes or just have a bath before you worship Him. All these are just blind morals that people follow, that I will not be able to worship or read the Bible unless I take a bath, or unless I put on good clothes, or unless I come out of my dirty place. You can still worship Him just as you are. That's what He wants. You worshiping Him in the truth of your life, in the reality of your life. When you are grounded in the most bottom part of your life, that's your worship that pleases and touches the heart of God. Because as long as you are yourself, God is pleased with you, because you are true to yourself, because you are true to who you are. You're not trying to be someone else or something else or someone greater or someone better. You are just who you are, and that's what really matters, because that's where the heart of the Lord is touched and pleased in you. That you, being grounded in the reality of your life, worshiping Him, are choosing to worship Him. Now, when you combine the Spirit and the truth and you worship the Lord, that is when the heart of God is melted. That is where you touch the heart of God. That is where the Lord is pleased in you, and that is why He seeks you. And that's why it is written, whosoever is the true worshipper, you will know them when you see them worshiping the Lord in spirit and truth, because that's what the will of the Father is. Because all those who worship the Lord truly know that the Lord is after your spirit and your truth. Those who worship the Lord truly know this, that the Lord is after your worship in the spirit and your worship in truth. And that's why God values your spirit and truth, that you worship Him everywhere, anywhere, anytime, anyhow, being grounded in the reality of your life. He's the least bothered of the things that you have in the physical, but what is within. That's what He really wants. That's what really matters to Him. That's what really touches His heart. And that's why this whole thing is that you live a lifestyle of worship. And whatever you have, whatever the reality of your life is, just worship Him in it. That God is a spirit. And those who worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. Take this as a command. Worship the Lord in spirit and worship the Lord in truth. Because that's what He really wants. That you, knowing Him, worship Him in spirit and in truth.